Everyone thinking about swapping their 1080p for a 1440p asks the same things. Is the FPS hit really that bad? Is the visual difference actually worth it? Are there hidden costs nobody's talking about? And after a full year on a 1440p monitor, I can finally answer all three. Plus, tell you who this swap is actually for. So let's start with the FPS side because that's the part most people worry about first. So the first real question, if I swap to 1440p, am I going to lose half my frames? And the short answer is no, but it depends a lot on what you play. For competitive games like CS2 and Valorant, basically nothing changes. Now these games are CPU bound, your processor is doing most of the work and the GPU is just like kinda sitting there. I'm pulling 800 plus frames in Valorant at native 4040p, 600 to 700 in CS2 depending on the map, basically the same range I was getting on my old 1080p Acer. The resolution doesn't really matter when your CPU is the bottleneck. Now Apex is a bit different, it uses both CPU and GPU pretty heavily, so you'll see more of a hit going to 1440p than CS2 or Valorant. Nothing crazy, but just so you know that is there. Now AAA games is where it actually costs you. For example, something like Crimson Desert on high settings, native at 1440p, I get like 50, 60, 70 frames depending on the region. And I have an RTX 4070 Super, and it's not that smooth to be honest. So the honest answer, if you're around like a 4070 class GPU or even better, 1440p starts making sense. You can run most stuff properly, and in the heavier AAA games, you'll use DLSS quality or tweak a few settings and just move on. Below that, like a 3060, 4060, that range, maybe even lower, I'd be way more careful because now the monitor upgrade can also turn into a GPU upgrade real fast. So that's to be honest the FPS side. The other half is whether what you actually see is worth the money. So competitive games didn't really make a new experience after the swap. It's basically the same shit, just cleaner. And if you're like expecting 1440p to make your aim better because you can see stuff more cleaner, you're just buying the wrong upgrade to be honest. Where it actually pays off is everywhere else on your PC. And the first thing you notice when you plug this in is how much more room you have on your desktop. When you've got like a bunch of tabs open, Discord on the side, OBS running, whatever, you don't feel that overwhelming thing that you used to feel on like a 1080p. It's still 1440p, is not ultra wide, so don't expect like miracles, but the extra space is really nice. Editing is also where it actually helps a lot. I edit every video on this monitor, thumbnails too, your timeline feeds more clips, your preview windows is bigger, overall it's just like much better for that aspect. And if you play like a lot of AAA stuff, this is probably the biggest visual upgrade you'll get out of swapping monitors. And also movies. Didn't think I'd care about this that much to be honest, but watching anything on a 27-inch 4040p OLED monitor feels really good. But none of this comes free. So there are three real costs you need to know before you spend any money. None of them are like huge problems, but you should know about them. First one is the GPU. I already covered this in the FPS part, but the cost angle here is different. If you're sitting like I said on a 3060 or a 4060 and you grab a 1440p monitor before upgrading the GPU, the monitor turns into a forced GPU upgrade real fast. And that cheap $300 panel becomes $800 total once you factor in a new card, even more. So either plan for both or just stay on 1080p for now. Second one is the panel itself. And this is where most people get it wrong. IPS or OLED, they're not the same thing and you can see it in the price. A solid 1440p IPS sits around like $250 to $350. Of course you don't have the burning problem, it has decent motion, looks really good overall. Now an OLED runs you 500 to 800, even more depending on the refresh rate. Of course you get way better contrast, way better motion, blacks that actually look black. The only real downside is that the OLED text can look a bit weird in some particular apps. And there is some burning risk over like years of heavy use. Now for my use close to like 5000 hours, I have like zero burning, so I don't know really. So if you're really scared about the burning factor, a good 27-inch 1440p IPS still gives you the same resolution upgrade, the desktop space, and most of what makes this swap worth it. Third one is the part nobody talks about, and a quick heads up, this mostly matters if you're chasing high refresh rates. If you just want like a regular 4040p monitor at 144 or 165 Hz, it doesn't matter that much. Now this isn't really a resolution problem, it's a bandwidth problem. DisplayPort 1.4 only carries about 25.9 GB per second of real usable bandwidth. So once your signal needs more than that, your GPU sends a compressed signal and the monitor decompresses it on the other end. And to be clear, DAC itself isn't some image quality killer. It's designed to be virtually lossless, and most people won't see a difference. The annoying part is everything around it. For example, on older Nvidia cards, especially the 30 and 40 series, a lot of high refresh DP 1.4 monitors that rely on DNC can cause long black screens when you alt tab out of like exclusive full screen games like CS2. Sometimes it's 3 seconds, sometimes it can be like 10 seconds. And with a capture card and a stream PC in a chain like I have, it gets even worse, like 30 to 40 seconds easily. Now a rough rule for when this hits 1440p 144 or 165 Hz, you're usually fine, you won't see this problem. 1440p at 240 Hz at 8-bit can often still fit without DAC. Of course it depends on the timing and monitor behavior, but 240Hz with 10-bit HDR very often pushes you into DSC. Above that 1440p 300 or like 360Hz, assume DP 1.4 needs DSC. On 1080p 360Hz isn't like automatically in the danger zone. The real DSC territory there is more like 480Hz, 500Hz, 540Hz. HDMI 2.1 can sometimes dodge this because full bandwidth HDMI 2.1 has more headroom than DP 1.4. You can sometimes push 1440p closer to 360Hz without DSC. But don't just like trust the label on the box. Some monitors say HDMI 2.1 while the port is actually reduced bandwidth. Sometimes like 24 GB per second instead of the full 48. Some even cap the refresh rate on HDMI artificially. So check your monitor specs before buying. Now of course the cleanest fix is a real DP 2.1 chain. GPU, monitor and a cable all supporting the right USB-R tier like USB-R 13.5 or USB-R 20. Now RTX 50 series finally gives Nvidia full DP 2.1 USB-R 20, and it also seems to fix or at least reduce the old DAC Alta problem even on plain DP 1.4 monitors. Now the community explanation is that on older Nvidia cards some high bandwidth monitor settings with DSC active could use 2 internal display heads instead of 1. Now RTX 50 series seems to handle more of those settings with 1 head, which is why the Alta behavior improves. But that explanation is based on testing and user reports, not unlike an official statement from Nvidia, so before you jump at me, I'm just the messenger. And AMD users seems like they don't really have this problem that much. So if you're on a 30 or 40 series Nvidia card with a high refresh DP 1.4 monitor, especially 1440p 360Hz or like 4K to 40Hz, and you stream or use like a capture card, DAC is something you'll probably feel and it's mega annoying. So honest verdict after a year, this is the best monitor I've ever owned for what I do, and probably the best money I've put into my setup in a long time. Only thing I regret is not making the swap sooner. And before anyone says, well, you've got an OLED, that's why, I've also got a 27-inch IPS on the side that goes up to 4K. And I actually run it at 1440p for gaming because that PC isn't strong enough to push 4K properly. Completely different panel, no OLED magic, just a regular IPS. And the same conclusion. A good 27-inch 1440p setup is way nicer than 1080p once you actually use it for work, edit, single player and daily stuff. And now the actual decision what you should buy. If your only thing is like competitive games, CS2, Valorant, Apex, all day every day, honestly I stay on 1080p and grab the highest refresh rate panel you can afford. That's the safest, most stable setup you can run. You get the most frames, the most consistent performance, and you stay close to what every pro and tournament uses anyway. So save the rest of the money for a better mouse or a chair you can actually sit in for hours. Now if you do anything else on your PC, work, edit, watch stuff, play single player games, mix of competitive and casual, 1440p is the move. The desktop space, the editing, the image quality on AAA games, all of it just makes your daily PC life nicer. Of course, as long as your GPU can handle it. And if you're on the fence, just drop your GPU and current monitor in the comments. I'll tell you straight up if the swap makes sense for you. And if you want to see more about gaming peripherals in general, check out the next video.